How does a person answer why something happens?
When you look at the findings in different fields,
scant is the part of life in which we live.
To attain the highest values.
One of the next things often happens in this process, and you've had that turning point, you need to get better, is people enlist the help of a coach or a mentor. Did you have any people like that in your journey?
Luckily for me, I've had a ton of just incredible mentors. And at that stage, I had some, I wouldn't necessarily call them direct mentors in terms of like, I wasn't going to them specifically for help.
Yeah.
I was more watching them and just learning kind of by paying attention to what they were doing. I did still have my old mentor from law school who I started reaching out to more. And that would be Tyler, who I started really leaning on and saying, hey, like, where am I going wrong? How do I change this? What do I do better? What did you see me doing well back in law school? How can I recreate that now? And so I was working some with him, obviously. In terms of at the actual DA's office, I was at one where I wish there was a better mentor type program, but there really wasn't. So I was learning from other people and watching what they did. And it was actually a really transformative experience when I started paying attention to how they were trying cases and started seeing how they appealed to emotions, how they connected with their audience and their jury, how they connected with the judges that they were talking to. And so I picked up a lot there, but really the big mentor moment for me was when I left that county and went to Dallas. Mm-hmm. When I went to Dallas, that's really where I had a couple mentors who just absolutely changed everything about me in terms of really going for this level of trial lawyer that I wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
And they really showed me the way. And I worked with them closely. I've worked with coaches. I just think there's such a value in learning from people who have been there, done it, are willing to help you. I mean, I remember my first felony trial I went into, and the way trials work is you have to prove somebody guilty first, and then you go into punishment. But there's no break. If the jury comes back guilty in punishment, you immediately move on, or guilty in, if they come back guilty, you immediately move on to punishment. You don't get any break, which means it's a weird deal where you're having to prepare both the guilty, not guilty phase trial and also prepare the punishment phase trial.
In case you need it.
Right. In case you need it, which means you're having to get other witnesses, you're having to talk to them, you're having to prepare judgments. And this case was particularly tricky. Like to this day, it was still probably the trickiest punishment case I've ever had. And of course, it's the first one I have. And it was like a month after I got moved to the felony position. Mm. And I remember going to my mentor in the situation and saying, look, I need help. Like, I don't know how to do this. I know that these should be able to come in, and it was a bunch of judgments. And we had to just piece them together. And we just spent 2 hours, basically him helping me figure out how I would do this, and then walking through it again and again and again, so that when I got into the actual trial phase of that punishment in front of a judge, I could do it seamlessly, because this judge that I was in front of was notoriously defense friendly. Like, she did not want to send people to prison. She was not kind to prosecutors. And so I knew if I didn't have this perfect, because it was so confusing, that there was no way she was going to let it in. And without those judgments, I wasn't going to be able to send this person to prison for the amount of time that they really deserved. And I just remember, without his help, because I was talking to other prosecutors in the office, other felony prosecutors, and they had no idea how to do this. Zero. They're like, I think you're just lost. And he just sat down and we worked on it for hours until we got it perfect. And we went into trial. I did it, no problem whatsoever. And the result was great. But it was all because this mentor showed me. And from that moment on, because he had shown me how to do this, all of a sudden I was in a position now, people started coming to me and I was able to help them, because I had this really deep understanding of how we can use judgments with one another to get them in, what we're looking for. Like, I basically got this crash course education from somebody who was at the very top of his game, trying death penalty cases left and right in Texas. And that experience was just invaluable, and to this day still resonates with me. I mean, I'm telling you the story right now because I can picture being in his office and going through it on the table, spreading it out, him walking me through it. And it was just one of those transformative experiences for me.
That is an excellent story. And we're seeing this play out now in the online courses and online businesses that we're involved in, and people learning from each other. It's like this whole thing. I keep saying each one teach one. And if everyone takes that attitude, that what that guy did for you, you've been able to pay forward to others. One more sort of tactical part of that. So, it's great having someone with a map of kind of what to expect, and that helps prepare you for it, but you still got to go in there and take your punches and come back. What role did reflection play in that? And was your mentor, involved in that as well?
That was the big change too. Why I say in Dallas, it was such a different approach. My mentors, and this was, these were people who were like the number 2 in the Dallas office, would come in. Even the DA herself, during my time there, would literally come in and watch us in trial and give feedback and thoughts and ideas. And so in terms of reflection, it was incredible. These leaders were invested in our success. And I'll never forget that same case that I was just talking about, where one mentor helped me in the guilty, not guilty phase, when I started my opening statement, which is the first thing you actually get to talk to the 12 jurors in. The first assistant, which is the number 2 in the office, walked through the door and came and sat right next to me at counsel table and just sat there and watched me do my opening statement. So the first ever felony I did, the first assistant is seated at my table with me, watching me do the opening statement. Of course, that raises your heart rate a little bit.
Yeah.
This is my boss. He's way up there. He makes most of the decisions in that office for personnel and those types of matters. But I remember I finished it and I walked back and sat down, and he just leaned over to me and he goes, "Crab, you got this." And he walked out. And that kind of leadership, right, always sticks with you. Somebody sitting there watching that and then turning to you and just saying, "Crab, you got this." Like, if you don't think that inspires a sense of confidence for everything after that point, you'd be crazy. And so I think that reflection when you're talking about it, like, I was fortunate because these people that I was working with, who had been prosecutors and attorneys and judges for decades, would sit in, watch me, listen to what I'm doing, talk with me, and always did it in a way that was encouraging and helpful, but also pushed me to really achieve what they saw I was capable of. And that was actually one of the tough things when I left the office, was hearing some of the things that they had envisioned for me over the long term. And it was one of those, it was encouraging to hear, but I was like, I wish that I could stick, but this is not the right situation for me.
Yeah. That's a huge role in motivation. It's almost then the skill itself becomes the motivation when people give you that outside validation, and you start to believe in yourself. You start to believe, I'm actually a master of this craft and I can do this. And that kind of keeps you going. And obviously, clearly, like you said before, one keeps making you want to get better and better and go up the next level on the ladder. So getting feedback and debriefing with mentors is one key component of this concept of deliberate practice. The other is being put out of your comfort zone, or getting pushed out of your comfort zone, testing yourself in a situation that just is kind of a bit of a stretch, right? Because that's where real learning happens. Can you think of any examples of that where being out of your comfort zone helped you master this?
Oh, for sure. I think every trial I've been in has felt a little bit out of your depth early on, right? So the first time you try a felony case, you feel uncomfortable because it's big stakes. The first time you go from being a misdemeanor prosecutor where the stakes are at a maximum 1 year in county jail to the next case you try. So the case I tried before the one I was just talking about, the maximum amount was 1 year in jail. When I tried that first felony case, I immediately was dealing with a case that was 25 years up to life in prison. You want to talk about an uncomfortable situation to jump from 1 year to now I'm talking about like somebody has been victimizing women, elderly women, hurting them, attacking them, stealing from them. And we're talking about potential life in prison. Like that is a different level.
Yeah.
So that was one. When I got moved into child abuse, that was another one, right? Where you just facing this. It's hard to really describe the first time you interact with a child. And this was a situation when I got sent into child abuse. I was actually sent there because the caseload I was taking over had basically just been abandoned. The previous person working on it hadn't really done any work, so it had gotten really backlogged. And I had tried so many cases and was always happy to go to trial, and people had seen kind of the results I was getting. I was told, you're being put here, and we understand it is a mess, but we know that you'll clean up the mess. And the first case I took over was a child abuse case that was set for trial in 2 weeks. The victim and her family had not been contacted in the past 4 years. And I just looked at it and I said, how am I supposed to do that? Like in 2 weeks, you want me to bring somebody up to speed on a child abuse case when they haven't been talked to in 4 years? And here's the kicker. The little girl was 3 years old when the abuse happened to her.
Yeah.
So it was just, I sat there and was just in shock of like, I don't know how to do this. And it's horrific because we had so much evidence pointing to that this absolutely 100% happened. And I'm like, I can't lose this case.
Yeah.
I can't let somebody who's doing this to children go, especially because I had evidence that this person had done it to other family members as well.
Yeah.
And so I just remember, you want to talk about being stretched outside of your comfort level. Like I immediately was just like telling my investigator, we've got to get this family in here. We need to be in here on a regular basis for the next 2 weeks, getting ready. This is going to be really rough. I don't know. I've never talked to a child about this stuff before. I'm gonna have to figure it out on the fly. Like, let's get it going. And I remember the first time it was just, it couldn't have gone worse, which was to be completely expected. This little girl hadn't been talked to in 4 years from somebody. And it's something that happened when she was 3 years old. And so that kind of situation where you're placed into this, and again, we ended up trying that case. I didn't know what was going to happen there. I had no idea. And I didn't want to fail, not the family, not the little girl, any of that. So we ended up ultimately making it through and ended up winning the case. And a good result came out of it. But that's why I say every first time in a trial, it seems like in every child abuse case, to be honest, is uncomfortable and is a stretch and forces you to be better because you just never know what's going to happen. Same with family violence cases. The cases where it's really messy and it's family members doing things, it's just messy. And so you're learning so much because in that moment, it's just chaos and it's just figuring out how to navigate it. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a big part of the learning process is just getting in there and being stretched and learning how to get comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Because right after that case, you can probably do those in your sleep kind of thing. I mean, you just know you've gone through that visceral experience of that first time.